Hello and good now to all of you who may be watching. Welcome to the Change 2024 Think Tank. My name is Ryan Erickson. This think tank sponsored by Bowling Green State University, Schmidt-Horst College of Business, the Academy of Management, and Nexus for Change, the collaborative change library host of that, along with many method snapshots and interesting ways to engage with change. So today we have a new twist on the think tank format. We have three interconnected presenters from uh, not all from Penn State. Farhan, you're Kansas State, I think.
Yeah,
So Kansas State. So the three presenters today we have Farhan Sadique. Oh, okay, Farhan there.
thank
And we have, I was gonna say, Bill Rothwell. Where is Bill? Yeah, there's Bill Rothwell, and we have Eileen Zaballero here as a trio to invite each of us here into their thinking and being in the domain of organizational development and change. So. Farhan, I have been told that you are the initial diver into the think tank, so please take it away.
thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today we are going to talk about organization development, and I'm Farhan Sadique. I'm a Kansas State assistant professor, but my identity is still attached to Penn State. I just graduated from Penn State this year, Dr. Rothwell's graduate assistant, and currently working for Rothwell and Associate as a partner as well. So I'm going to start with our recent research on finding trend in organization development. And what starts with this gravitational pull or trending toward human-centeredness and people-first agenda of organization development. And later, we're going to talk about some trends that we observed and how we are tackling those trends with the OD practitioners and how we are preaching OD and using different strategies to get our students learn more about organization development practices and how we respond to different situations. So let's start with organization development. It's a fundamentally humanistic approach, as we all know, placing people in the center of shaping the change and success of organization initiatives. The concept of gravitation pull of human-centeredness underscores the importance of prioritizing human or employee well-being, participation, and growth in creating change intervention in the workplace. At its core, OD is about fostering the environment where individuals excel through bottom-up change. Knowing that there are still organizations, about 75% organization based on the Gartner survey are still doing top-down approach. So they come up with a plan or change strategy, create detailed implementation roadmaps, and develop a high-volume change communication. But at the end, most of those change initiatives fails. Whereas OD practitioners understand by focusing on human aspiration, OD can become a catalyst for meaningful and sustainable change. So that's where we're going to start our today's discussion. And on the next slide, we're going to share some reports as we analyzed different OD trends, try to see how we see the future of OD or organization development. These are the reports are really phenomenal. Impact Radar 2024, the future jobs from World Economic Forum, Workplace Intelligence Forecast for 2025, and the World of Work. But this is not all. There are multiple other resources that just came up in 2024 or at the end of 2024, talks about the changes, the trends, and as we see those changes, there's some data that also caught our eye, and which, based on what we're going to share the proposed framework that we came up with. So it's a years of disruption. There are pandemic that changed the way we do things, and but also there is a change fatigue because there are so many changes going through the organization and growing challenge for many organizations as organization become complex. According again, the Gartner research, I want to refer back, the employee willingness to support new initiatives dropped from 74% in 2016 to 38% in recent years. Not a good news because we continuously change and changes the way we do. But people's interests are dropping just because there is this change fatigue. And also it relates directly to the turnover because the people who are fatigued with changes, 43% of those employees says they plan to stay with their current employers. Rest of them are tired of changes and they are planning to leave. So how do we tackle that, or how do we see the trends of OD? So to explore that, we came up with this prospective inquiry framework, kind of to categorize all the trends that we see, and we framed them under global interconnectivity, which examines the interconnectedness of economies and cross-border operation of ODE. Technological integration focuses on implementing the digital tools, the artificial intelligence. We'll talk a lot more about technologies. And finally, the human-centered application, which again emphasizes the humanistic approach of ODE and to foster resilience and adaptability. Okay, so I'm going to start with the global connectivity. And the first question comes to our mind is why it matters, or why do we care? On the next slide, as you see, global connectivity. So all the decision does have a ripple effect. And OD emphasizes on open system thinking. OD people care about global connectivity because of the ripple effect of each decision that we make. So think about the pandemic. Started from a small town, then it spread over all over the world, and each of us had to isolate it, had to stay in our own cubicle and work from there. And eventually, we got dependent on the virtual platforms, and using those platforms became critical for our success. So as we implement changes or plan intervention, we have to consider the changes that might come in the future. And also OD is becoming more global, working with our partners from Middle East and also recent journals. One of the open journals of organization development review focused on just changes in Africa. There is changes in Asia as well. And all those practitioners are utilizing the tools, the organization development concepts and theories, and utilizing in the different context of it. So OD practitioners, we have to ensure the designs that we create are scalable, adaptable, and applicable to diverse region, and also anticipate and respond to global disruption, because the changes are unstoppable. The change will continue happen, and we see ourselves as one of the example Dr. Rothwell always mentioned is picture and the picture frame. So we see organization as the picture, but the whole society and societal change is the frame of the picture. So what happens to the frame of the picture eventually has an impact of the organization or the picture. Next topic, we're going to talk about the technological integration and the trends that we see in the practices of OD based on technologies. This is one of the most favorite topic of everyone. We're always talking about technologies, AI, big data, and OD considers that as well. On the next slide, you will see some reasons why it matters to the OD practitioners. Because OD is always about integration, and technology helps with integration. Technology is helpful to create an environment where we can work together, reshaping our approach to change. It does have a lot of opportunities, a lot of ways to do things, but also comes with a fair share of challenge. Real-time data, advanced analytics, big data to utilize in the organization are some of the things we always consider when it is now we're writing proposals. We always ask what kind of data they have and how we can utilize those data. And also there is an expectation that OD practitioners will be able to deal with some sort of data. Digital tools and AI-enabled real-time insight and analytics is one of the factors that a lot of researchers are working on. Practitioners need data literacy for effective insight application, and in the future, we see automation frees time for strategic initiatives, but by reducing tasks. And some sort of automation helps through collaboration and ensuring artificial intelligence is a support for human, not replacing human. And that's where OD is a very important tool. OD talks about reskilling, upskilling employees in the OD trends, and OD practitioners are focused on adaptability, agility, and personalized training and learning. Finally, the last trend that we have observed under the human-centered approach. On the next slide, you will see, first we're going to start with why it matters, or why we care about the human-centered approach. Because people are the driver of change. 70% of the change effort fails because the mismanagement of the human side of change. As I have started my discussion, still a lot of organizations are not considering the fact that they have to engage the employees. Today's presentation, we also want to talk about different ways of developing those tools and understanding what can help, or how they can engage learners, how they can engage employees in different change management process and learning system. So OD practitioners are facilitating group activities that promote interpersonal understanding, facilitate purpose mapping, workshop, and also integrate well-being and metrics for organizational assessment. There are different assessments that OD practitioners are using. And finally, also how it implicates OD is just a little bit more before we welcome Dr. Rothwell. There are different changes we observe: employee well-being and mental health, and also we see diversity, equity, and inclusion is being a really important talk of the topic. But how we do employee well-being and mental health, in the past few years, we have done research creating open system where we create an inclusive environment where we make decision. One of the article that we published based on the psychological theories and how we develop those based on organization development. And we developed SARA, shifting, engaging, I forgot the rest of the two, but it's on the OD journal, OD review article. Dr. Brendel is really working on some really good projects on that to create mindfulness and wellness program. Foster psychological safety and inclusive network, and finally promoting work-life balance and boost engagement. And diversity, as we all know, OD is very active in guiding organization in embedding DEI principles, and finally facilitating cultural audits. With that, I'd like to invite Dr. Rothwell to talk more about what we're doing to preach OD.
Okay, thank you,
Just a second. I want to make sure we all get a chance to hang out and breathe
Yes.
a moment to acknowledge Farhan and what he has brought to the table. Give thanks. Oh, and also for those of you in the room, feel free to explore into the comments, put some chats out there to provoke and evoke as we progress through the session today. Bill, take it away.
Let me briefly introduce myself. I'm Bill Rothwell. I'm at Penn State University. There I head up a graduate program in OD. We have an all-online master's degree in OD that I created the curriculum for based on the research that I did with Chris Worley and with Roland Sullivan. Some of you know Roland is what I call recently deceased, but I worked with him and his wife, Chris Quaid, who's on this call for many years. We were co-editors of a book series in OD from Wiley, and there we produced, 20 to 25 books in the OD field. It was meant to be a follow-on after the demise of the Addison Wesley OD series. Anyway, I also advised Ph.D. students with an emphasis in OD at Penn State. Prior to my arrival at Penn State in '93, I was a practitioner in both government and in business, a big multinational company, for 20 years, starting my career in '74 and arriving at Penn State in '93. And I've been here since. I own 3 consulting companies. I've been to China 83 times and to every Asian country at least 20 times, and done consulting all over the world in OD. So next slide. Just so you have a little bit of background about me. I want to talk about how we bridge theoretical knowledge and practical application in a human-centered approach. And since I've been teaching OD since '93, I've encountered a problem that I have spent a lot of time and effort trying to solve. And that is, how do we build student engagement in OD classes, whether they're online or on site or a hybrid? How do we build engagement? And more specifically, how do we get the student to build his or her skills in OD? And I'll tell you that one of the big challenges I've faced over the years is that students arrive in my classes, many of them with substantial OD experience, and they think that OD is the same thing as management consulting, or what we call in human resources performance consulting, where the consultant applies a medical model to all consulting work. And I emphasize the all. So students arrive in a class many times thinking the role of the consultant is to arrive to an organization, diagnose the problems, much like a medical doctor would do with a sick patient, and then identify the medicine or the therapy to prescribe to the sick patient in order to cure him or her. And they apply that logic, thinking that the default of all consulting is a medical model where the consultant is expert. Well, that's what I try to overcome, and I've spent a lot of time and effort trying to figure out ways to overcome that problem. Next slide. So we want to talk in this session about how we develop human-centered professionals, particularly in an age where many people have forgotten that sociotechnical systems is one of the foundational principles of OD. We live in an age where many people are enamored or even obsessed with AI, artificial intelligence, and they have diminished or forgotten about the human element in many organizations. So the human side of the enterprise is often ignored. And we've still got that problem even today. And even though we know that many economists claim we're moving into an innovation-based economy, where the key to business success and competitive advantage is the ability of human beings to think creatively, outsmart competitors. Move on to the next slide. So one of our goals in OD, and particularly in the academic side, is to build professional OD practitioners. How do we do that? And that is one of our big challenges. And I believe that if you examine the OD academic world, and many of you may not agree with me, but I will say controversial things in this discussion, I think that you can divide OD programs on an academic level into two groups. One of those I call real OD, and the other half I call fake OD. What's the difference? Well, in many universities, the faculty are sometimes told, oh, you can get big enrollments if you launch a program in something called organization development. And the existing faculty know absolutely nothing about the history of OD. They just think it's a label that you can slap on anything. So they poll the professors and they say, what courses would you like to teach? And they throw into a hat a list of courses, and they, jumble the hat, and they pull the titles of the courses out, and they call that a program in organization development. That's what I call fake OD. And I think if you examine a lot of academic programs in OD, you will see what I'm saying is the truth. On the other hand, there are programs like mine, and I think Bowling Green State is another, and there are others out there, where they've actually are aware of the history and practice of organization development. In my case, I built the program at Penn State around the work that Chris Worley and myself and Rollin Sullivan did when we built a OD competency model over a 21-year period with over 8,000 OD practitioners participating in 54 countries. And we built a competency model of OD, and I built our graduate program around that structure. And so we had an established knowledge base that's research-based, that's evidence-based. Unfortunately, there's still not a certification program in the OD field, but there are standards and qualifications, and we know that there are ethical and value guidelines in our field, and that there is a real professional identity of OD practitioners, and there are career pathways in the field. But how do we build people who are true OD professionals? That's the challenge, and especially when we have a student base. Again, many of my students are in their early to mid 30s, and they've had experience. These are not pink-cheeked teenagers with no work experience. These are people who've had substantial, maybe up to 10 or 15 years of work experience in OD, but they come to the university still with a rather superficial understanding of the background of the field, and they've never had proper training. Their employers didn't give it to them, or if they were employed by a famous consulting company, they were probably trained with a shadowing approach where they followed someone around and watched what they were doing, and Lord knows what they were doing. And so who knows what kind of training they had in OD. So that's what we often face in the academic world when we try to train people in OD. There's a disconnect between the theory and the practical application, particularly with students who think OD is all about playing a medical doctor who comes in, diagnoses a patient, issues recommendations, medicine, therapy, and then walks away, washes their hands, and expects the change to happen. And I've spent years trying to overcome this problem. And I can tell you the truth, I've had cases where I told students across 20 graduate courses that they should never dictate to the client what to do. Never dictate to the client. And then after they'd had 20 courses with me, I take them out on a real OD consulting experience. And in the first 5 minutes, the client asks them what they should do, and the student answers them. You can see how that would drive me crazy, because that is the medical approach, and the student easily falls into that trap. So how do we overcome that when we are trying to teach future OD professionals? We can tell them the difference between the medical model and the clinical psychology model of consulting. In the medical model, the doctor assumes all the responsibility for diagnosis. And in the clinical psychology model, particularly based around humanistic psychology, the psychologist knows that the client already knows the problem. Maybe they have a drinking problem. Maybe they have a gambling problem. Maybe they have a drug addiction problem. Well, they have a problem typically in psychology. But in OD, typically we're dealing with mentally healthy patients, but they still have a perceived problem. And often the client is the real expert on what should be happening. The problem is the client members, the members of the client organization, don't agree among themselves on what are the problems, what are the solutions, what are the action plans to implement the solutions, what are the priorities, and what are the best metrics by which to measure success. So an OD consultant is a facilitator who helps the client organization discover their own diagnosis, and whether we want to use a diagnostic or a dialogic approach, we're still helping the client reach their own conclusions. But how do we get students to understand this when they think from day one, and it's a really difficult problem to overcome, that all consultants are dictators? They dictate to the client what the hell to do. And that is fundamentally wrong. So how do we overcome that maddening perception? So, and of course, I don't mean to diminish the dictatorial approach. There is a legitimate approach called human performance consulting. Some people call it human performance technology. Others call it human performance engineering, where we actually do go in and diagnose from an expert standpoint using research base and evidence to diagnose what's wrong with a client and issue recommendations. But that is not OD. And so how do we teach the right approach? So we have to teach skills. It's not good enough to teach the theory. We can go crazy teaching people the theory of OD, teach them the steps of Lewin's action research model or Cooper Ryder's appreciative inquiry model, and they may understand on a knowledge level what that is, but do they really understand how to do it? So it's the skill development that is the challenge. Next slide. So we like to talk about the difference, and we use a boundary-based approach. We want to use experiential learning where we engage the learner with real problems, and if we can, we use a game-based foundation for it so that there is collaboration and an element of competition in coming to understand the real world skills needed by OD practitioners. Next slide. So here's the model that we've developed, and we've field tested this many times with many groups over many years. And here it is. This is the basic approach we use. It starts with teaching a key concept. So we introduce a model like the action research model or the appreciative inquiry model, and then we teach them through a case story, which is based on a real consulting experience in OD, and we select a case story that is based on a key concept. And then we engage the student group and put them in breakout groups and ask them some questions about the case story and get them to think it out in their breakout sessions. And then we debrief those discussion questions. And then we move them into a role play where they are asked to act out the characters in the case story. So they're actually put in a simulated environment, which is based on a real world case, where they have to apply and they get to act out either the role of the OD practitioner or the role of the client. And I believe it's important for the OD consultant to have a feeling for what the client lives through, as well as what the OD consultant lives through. And then finally, we debrief this. Now we have to build an approach in this sandbox that can be used in online instruction, on-site, classroom-based instruction, with undergraduates, with graduate students, with people from many cultures. And we have to also have something that even real world practitioners can appreciate. And as an example, we can look at the entry step in the action research model. What are we trying to do there? We build certain knowledge around the fundamentals of OD. How do you get into a client organization? How do we go through developing a consulting proposal and overcoming a client's view that we should give them a soup to nuts approach to a consulting proposal when in fact we aren't even sure what the problem is. We just know what the client has told us. And then in this scene, we go through the steps. So we apply this model of key concepts, case story, discussion, role play, and debrief around each step of a model, whether that model is the action research model or whether the model is appreciative inquiry, or we could apply it to other models if we wished, ADKAR, the Cotter model, you name it, other models for change efforts. Next slide. So we worked over many years, and the results of our efforts have culminated in 2 books. The book on the left, Revolutionizing the Online Learning Journey, we began during the pandemic year of 2020, and we did focus groups with professors, with trainers in industry, with consultants, and we wanted to know how to make online learning more engaging and realistic for learners. So that culminated in the book on the left, which is basically like a smorgasbord of approaches that can be used to liven up and make more engaging online learning experiences. And then the book on the right, which is not yet in print, but will come out in fall 2025, we've been field testing extensively with graduates, with undergraduates, even with professionals at conferences. And we've had a preliminary copy of the book for over a year, using it with classes and with practitioners to test it out using the approach I just described in earlier slides. Next slide. So let me turn it over to Lean to talk about next steps.
And Lean, I got to jump in here for a second, and let's all appreciate Bill for bringing us in at that level deeper into practice and theory and the smorgasbord that we have here to engage with this thinking, from Farhan's trends to Bill's bridge. And Lean, how would you like to bring us into our group breakouts?
Well, I'm going to share with you what we've done in regards to listening to the students and the pilot test. But I just realized that if you're going to put yourself in a lineup, coming after Dr. Rothwell is probably not the best place to be. But here I am. I will also share that I am Dr. Rothwell's students, and I'm also one of those students that he was talking about, that I came into the OD program, and I really did think that I was going to walk out with a white coat and I get to tell everybody what to do. The whole idea of the doctor model is what I thought I was doing. And it took me a long time to figure out that is not what OD is, which is ironic and really funny because my background is in team building. And team building is actually one of the most common OD practitioners activities. I didn't know that for the longest time. And I think one of the things I did realize is that I was approaching team building not as an OD, but as a management consultant, because I did like telling people what to do. I did like telling people, this is the way you should be acting, and this is the way you should be thinking. And by the way, you're doing it wrong. And it was after years and years of working with Dr. Rothwell that I figured I was doing it wrong for a really, really long time. But this part of our session, I'm going to focus on the student's experience, looking at the whole idea of the human-centered approach and how we are developing and how we're kind of looking at the idea of what that actually means. My focus is really about sharing with you what we've done over the past 2.5 years. I told you a little bit about myself. I did come from team building. That's kind of my background. It was actually one of the things I really loved was the whole idea of experiential learning, being in the experience of things. I ran high ropes, low ropes. I did things from different kind of challenges, bike builds. Those were a lot of fun. Scavenger hunts. And I think part of it for me was about the adventure. It was about the fun. It was about learning, but not realizing that you're actually learning something. And I think I realize now that that's one of the best ways that we could actually help other people learn. Because when we start pounding into them that they need to learn this, they need to learn this, sometimes they just don't, they put that wall and that barrier and they forget that they're learning. So if we can make learning fun, enjoyable, engaging, and so that people really just let themselves be, there's a lot more that we can discover about ourselves. And I think that's why I've been learning so much, even after all these years of working with Dr. Rothwell, how sometimes I'm right, but a lot of times I'm actually really wrong. So building on the book. So he's talked about this book that we were writing. We did create the first preliminary draft. We worked with Cognella. Cognella has been great with us. We were really excited because they allowed us to create a preliminary draft. The preliminary draft actually came out. It was to a limited audience. It was basically to our students at Penn State, where Dr. Rothwell was teaching his fundamental course. We had a chance to pilot test it. So we pilot tested it for almost 2.5, 3 years. And based on the feedback that they gave us and from other people's feedback, we also sought some feedback from other people like Dr. Jameson. We made some changes to the book, and now the first draft is going to be coming out in 2025. In this, during that time, we did probably almost 20 simulations. This is from 3 per semester in Dr. Rothwell's classes. We've also have done it at the Penn State conference. We also did it with ISODC, so a lot of you are familiar with ISODC. When we were doing it with ISODC, the participants were actually engaged and live with each other. We were virtual. So that was an interesting approach to it. And then just last October, we did this with ATD Org Dev. And ATD Org Dev, we had almost 65, 70 participants. And it was the first time all of us were together. It was actually the first time I ever met Farhan, even though I was working with Farhan for almost close to 4 years now. That was the very first time I got to meet him, and that was really nice. But we did this whole simulation live, and that was a lot of fun. But I think the great thing about it was it allows us to see how adaptable the structure was. We're able to do it whether we're all virtual, which is what we've done mostly, whether we're live, which is a lot more engaging but a lot of fun, or whether or not they're live and we're virtual. So there was a lot of applications in regards to this structure and this format. When we were doing this, we had at least 100 participants. And I would say, I don't know, maybe out of all of them, almost 95%, I would say even close to 98%, said they had an incredible experience. Very, very few people, I don't think I even really heard anyone say that they didn't enjoy the experience. But we did hear that some people were hesitant coming in. They weren't sure about role play. Like the whole idea of role playing sounds kind of, sketchy. Do I really want to do that? I'm not an actor. I don't want to act. But at the end of it, when we had these with these students and these different participants, they were engaged, they were involved, they enjoyed it, and they really had something to learn. And that was what was really exciting about it. So the structure, Dr. Rothwell had mentioned about it. First, he goes over the concept. Usually in the concept, we're focusing on one of the 2 models. The book that we're publishing focuses on 2 of the models, which is the Kurt Lewin's action research model and also Cooper Ryder's appreciative inquiry model. And each one of the ways we do the simulations, they're broken up into 15 different scenes. Each scene focuses on one of the steps. Whether it's a step in the action research model or the step in the appreciative inquiry model, we focus on one at a time. When you go to that, in part of the discussing the key concepts, we were talking about the skills. What are the skills that you need to have as an OD practitioner? What do you need to do to be able to enter into the client and work with the client and build that collaboration, that connection, and be able to get that contract? What do you need to do to be able to gather and collect data, whether you're doing it from a dialogic or a diagnostic perspective? Or what do you need to do to collaborate? Because each one of those steps requires different skills. And a lot of times, I know when I first learned this whole model, I was like, oh, I know the model. I could do it. But there's so many nuanced pieces to being able to understand every step and different interactions that you're having, different positions, different ways of being interactive with a client. And this is one of the best ways that I found that we're actually really able to go in a granular level to really develop those specific skill sets. And so in here, I'm going to share with you, we had when they go through this and the whole idea of the scene, we're setting up this whole story. And the story, they're all based on Poppy Candy, which is on the cover of the book that you can see. This company, Poppy Candy, is a fictional company, but it's based on a company that one of our other co-authors had actually worked with. So she drew from her experience about some of the things that were happening. She drew from some of the backgrounds of the client and the dynamics of the family, because it's a family-owned business company. And so we created this fictional story. And in that, what we do is we present it to the students or the participants, and we created a video. The video was primarily to set the tone, set the stage so that they kind of get everyone on the same page. And I'm going to share with you a short sample. This is not the entire video, but this is one of the videos that they get to watch.
Background and introduction of the case. The Poppy Candy Company. In a major American metropolis, there is a for-profit hard sweet manufacturer called Poppy Candy Company. It is a non-branded business-to-business supplier. Poppy Candy mostly sells to other candy companies, who sell the candy under their own brand names. During the manufacturing process, Poppy Candy uses customer packaging and labeling from its various customers. Over the years, Poppy Candy has built up a loyal group of customers and values its strong ties with regular customers and suppliers. Poppy Candy has 150 full-time employees. But during the busiest times between August and October each year, that number rises to nearly 320 employees.
So we're giving them the information of the company as if they're working with a client. We give them background of the company. We give them about who the clients are, what the scenario is, so that they have a better understanding. So they're actually like they're working with a real client without the repercussions of doing the wrong thing. Because as we know, when you're implementing any kind of change, it can actually cost thousands, if not even millions of dollars if done incorrectly. And this is a safe way for the students to be able to do that. We give them enough information so they have a better understanding of what they might actually need to know.
To comply with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, food safety requirements, the business must continuously concentrate on candy quality. There are approximately 20 office personnel jobs. Over the past 3 years, Poppy Candy's revenue has increased by 3 to 5%. To support manufacturing capacity, the overall business strategy has concentrated on acquiring new clients. The history of Poppy Candy. Emil Pinkhaus Sr. started the company in 1928.
And then we also provide an organizational chart. One of the main purposes of this is to show them who are the clients they're working with. The way the scenario we have worked with is that this character, Ivan Pinkhaus, is now the CEO and COO because his brother, Gustav, had passed away. And these are the 4th generation children, and they're the ones who are actually the clients that you're going to be working with. These are the people that the students are going to role playing. Those are the characters that they're going to play. So in addition to watching that video, we also have videos, and we're not going to play all those because there's quite a few of them. They also get a video of each of the characters, whether they're going to play Ivan Pinkhaus, if they're going to play Kasia. So they get a background of who that person is. And when they're doing the role play, they play it from 2 perspectives. One, they're playing the role of Kasia, which when we give them that information, we will also give them a character card like this. It gives you information about Kasia. Kasia is 4th generation. She has a bachelor's in accounting. She's the middle daughter of Ivan. She's also the controller. She was the person who brought in the OD consultant. When we give them that character card or the videos, we let them know that this is just a guideline for them. This is just for them so that everybody's kind of on the same page, in the same space. But we also give them a lot of the creative freedom to play around with the character as how they want to interpret it. But then the other role that the student or participants will play would be the OD consultant. This is where they're playing themselves. As an OD consultant, now you're coming in to Poppy Candy and you're meeting with Kasia, who's the controller, or you're meeting with Ivan, or you're meeting with this other person. And now work on the skills that you're focusing on. If we're in the entry, how do you develop and build that relationship? How do you gain that contract? How do you gain their trust? And so that's where the students get to practice and try it out. We also have in this is we also have an observer. The observer is a really important role because the observer is just sitting back and they're watching and they're documenting. And the main purpose for them is to watch and see what worked, what didn't work, what will they do differently. And these roles get rotated. So the students 1 week may play the role of Cassia. The next week, they may play the role of the OD consultant, or another week, they'll play the role of an observer. The main purpose is to really get themselves engrossed, ingrained, and really in part of this experience of what it means to be an OD consultant. And then, so we, as I said, we've probably had over 100 students, participants go through this, and we've had some really amazing feedback. After our sessions, we always get some feedback, especially when we were developing the book. We ask them, the basic Delta Plus, what worked, what didn't, what are some of your recommendations? We asked it from the perspective of the pre-packaged information that we provide you, which is part of the chapter, so we wanted them to help us develop that. We also shared the videos and how helpful the videos were. The storyline itself, because each one, there's a different kind of storyline. The first storyline is that Ivan's brother had passed away, and they're coming in and they're interacting with them based on the fact that some of them may be mourning. Then the instructions of how to do the role play, and then the role play activity itself. So we collect all this data to find out people's experiences. And to our probably our joy, we really found out that people really enjoyed this. So they were saying things like, our group was all in. It was fun. Participants could organically develop the story and play off of each other. Others said that it was loved the engagement, invaluable, in such a safe space to practice. I think that part for me was really kind of neat, that it was a safe place to practice, because you don't want them to learn how to be an OD consultant working with a client and not really, one, explore their skill sets, because they're going to be kind of guarded to see whether or not they do the right thing or actually do the wrong thing. And then the other one was you can make a mistake and not be judged for them. So one of the things that what we noticed is that they were really they gave grace to each other, because they also gave feedback to each other about what they did. And we had one group one time where you could tell the person was a little nervous and really scared, and the rest of the team and the rest of the students were really just, you can do it, you've got it. And they kind of really understood where they were coming from, and which was really great to have that kind of learning environment. And the other one, that the big feedback that we got often, and we kind of modified this a little bit with Dr. Rothwell, is that they wish they had more time. They wanted to do more time, because part of it, when we're doing the pilot test, it's not part of the whole curriculum and part of the course. So we had to do it in the time that we had available, 2 hours in the evening on a weekend day. And it was also that we were doing parts of it, and some people attended a session 1 week, others didn't attend the session the another week. So they may not be completely ingrained with the character and the story. And so that was part of the challenge. For us, we were wanting to actually do this for this session, but there are some logistical challenges. Some of that is, one, if you don't know who the participants are ahead of time, logistically that could be difficult, because how do you assign the roles? How do you make sure that everybody's on the same page? How do you make sure that everyone watched the videos and were in alignment with what the storyline actually is? So those are some of the challenges. When we were doing it face-to-face versus doing it virtually, there's also different logistical things that we need to prepare for. So I think for us, when we were thinking about it, we thought that this session would probably be a better space to share with you, because this is actually the first time we're doing it this way, is to share with you what we've done and what has actually worked and what we've kind of learn from this experience, and even get feedback from all of you about what you all think about it. Because I think in this whole piece of this, it's an iterative process, right? We're going to continuously grow and develop, and we're going to change some things and see how things work. One of the ones that we are also doing in tonight, actually, and Dr. Rothwell asked me to invite all of you, if you're interested. It'll be tonight. We're doing a simulation. I'll share the link with you. It's going to be on the appreciative inquiry. We did the appreciative inquiry, the AI, the dream, and the discover phase, and we're following the 5D model. One of the things that we found out was that if the student or the participant is not emotionally connected to the client, to the story, to the event, it's really hard to do the dream and discover. So we're shifting the story a little bit, where they get to be the OD consultants and they're developing a consulting firm. I think as students, I think they'll have a more of emotional investment about what that actually means. So we're trying some different things. If anyone has any other feedback about how we can do that, we would love to hear from all of you. Again, for the book is going to be coming out in fall of 2025. It comes in several parts, but the book comes with the videos that we shared with you. And by the way, those videos we created on Vion. It's awesome. It's so easy to make a video. I feel like a movie director now because I can make that video just like that, thanks to technology, of course. But that you get all these pieces. And so our goal, and Dr. Rothwell specifically in his part of his mission, is to support other people to be able to help them develop OD, human-centered professionals, so that they're going in not as a doctor like I am and was, telling people what to do and be a dictator, but to be able to really kind of draw out from them about what works and really developing that whole human-centered approach. And so, as I stated, Dr. Rothwell did want to invite all of you. We're doing this AI Summit simulation tonight. If you guys can join us, we would love to have you. It'll be at 7 p.m. tonight. Anyone is welcome. You do not have to know about the AI Summit or appreciative inquiry. By the way, it's not artificial intelligence for somebody who may not know, but it is appreciative inquiry. We're doing it tonight from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and you are all welcome. And last thing, because I know you guys are going to go on breakout sessions and you're going to talk about us, which we hope you do. Here are some questions that we wanted to pose to all of you to really think about. One, what strategies have you used to bridge the gap, as Dr. Rothwell had mentioned, the gap between theoretical knowledge and practical application of a human-centered approach? And then, how do you, as practitioners, develop your skills? How do you continue to develop it? Because, with all these changes that are happening, we have to stay abreast with our own skills. And then also the last question, of course, is how do you develop the skills of others? Not knowledge, not just telling them what to do, or not just telling them what the theory is. How do you develop their skills? And that's all I have.
Thank you, Lean. Wonderful. It's some wonderful questions there. You may have your own at this point. As we said, that maybe there's a challenge, maybe there's something else you want to consider for feedback. And the breakout rooms now, my favorite, one of the favorite parts of these events. We're at 6 till the top of the hour. I think maybe 12 minutes. Lisa, can you set it up for 12 minutes? And if we have 13 participants, 5 of us hang back, 8 folks, how about 3 rooms? Can we do that?
Already been done.
Done. Fantastic. Dive into the tank.
And
Come
we
up
get
for
to
air.
take a nap during the time they're gone, right?
Maybe. We'll see. Who wants to nap after that? Well, maybe we've had all this smorgasbord of wonderful stuff that we can chew on. Fantastic.
We're going to run a little over. I hope that's not a problem.
I'm here for well, actually we're here for as long as you want to be here. I always want to
have
stay
a
longer
hard
too.
stop at 1 o'clock Eastern.
Okay. Lisa, we can keep this open for as long as we need to. Yes?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah. I mean, but we've been pretty good about 12:30, but we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
I'm giving a different webinar at 1 o'clock Eastern.
Yep.
Hmm.
We should be good.
Well, I have a couple of questions here that I'd like to bring, but do the 3 of you want to jam off each other at this point before I poke
Sure.
at you?
No, you go ahead, because we've been jamming off each other for a while.
Well, that's true for years, actually.
Well, this
both,
is
both of the people on this call have been my graduate assistants. I call them lovingly my slaves.
Yes.
And now they're out on their own, so to speak. And so, but we're still closely involved on many projects. So, yeah, go ahead.
Wow. Well, you've grown some fantastically flightful participants here and practitioners. My first question comes from the standpoint of, okay, so once you go through this wonderful program, which is fascinating, I would want to join myself. This is wonderful. there's an idea of there's a market out there. Is there a market for OD professionals who are in human-centered change? And what have you experienced in terms of feedback from recently graduated participants about their ability to engage in the marketplace and have career paths?
That's a great question. We have not tried to systematically collect data from alum who have participated. Our pilot sessions have been in optional extra credit sessions. So students were not coerced into going through the simulations. They were invited, and they would choose, most of them being adult learners with other life priorities. So we can't say that every student that went through the introductory OD class actually had exposure to the simulation. I believe that the simulation approach could actually be the basis for an entire graduate program. You could build the entire program around this approach, with the introductory class being a series of 15 simulations, one a week over an academic semester or an academic quarter. And then you could do each part of the action research model and the appreciative inquiry model in a series of graduate courses. So you could do that. We have not tried to do that. Our program is still based on the models. You still have the models as the foundation for our courses, but there's still lecture discussion format. So we have not converted into an all simulation based program. But I believe we could do that. And now I'm working on other types of programs, like take change management and build a program around. To me, change management means project management. And so you have a top-down approach to change that's more or less programmed using a model like the Cotter model or the ADKAR model. And you could build simulations around that just as easily. And
You've actually had several simulations on other kind of programs, not just OD. So with Farhan, they did a simulation on, what was it, Farhan, on the process consultation. So they have a whole book. They wrote a book on that one. I think, Dr. Rothwell, you have almost 7 or 8 different simulations that are being developed right now.
We have one on succession planning, so that we could put an executive team through a simulation of what it's like to build a robust succession program. So rather than them depending on a consultant to do it all for them, or working to build one from scratch, they could go through a program and have a hands-on experience with what it's like to build a succession planning program based on global best practice.
But I think to answer your question about whether or not there's a market, based on what Dr. Farhan had talked about earlier, there is going to be a greater need for more human-centered approach to developing talent, managing talent.
Students don't want lectures anymore, and they don't want lecture discussion. They want to just do it, the Nike motto. They want to experience OD, not talk about OD, not, be lectured about the theories of OD, but get a hands-on experience. And that's what we're trying to do.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you had practitioners who had graduated from your program who might be interested in something like that, maybe there's 2 in the room, possibly you might ask them about that. I know I would want to do that as a practitioner myself. And one thing, Lean, from the feedback section that you had, there was one theme about, oh, we want more time to do this stuff. You don't get time on the gig. And you get all the unpredictability of, oh, my partner has some home thing, or someone got hurt, or the client now has a huge opportunity that everything you were doing is gone. So
Right.
the ability to improvise and sense and
Yep.
respond to what's there is
Well, they
also.
get some taste of that in the session, particularly when they go through the entry scene where they're given 1 hour with the client in the introductory phase, and they quickly realize that 1 hour is nowhere near enough to gather adequate information, and yet they didn't quite prepare adequately to be able to squeeze the necessary information, to be able to facilitate a good proposal that they could then lay in front of the client later on. And this
But
comes as a revelation. Many of them, and we've even had people who were OD consultants in the class, and they never quite realized that until they went through the simulation.
Yeah.
you know,
Lean,
there's
you're gonna.
also there's a really a rich instructional design perspective from this, right? Because you could implement different types of scenarios where they don't have enough time, or maybe you have a client who's completely resistant, or you have a client who are both having conflicting ideas. There's so many rich scenarios from that one storyline that we have that the instructor has the opportunity to be able to modify and change it depending on the need. And it's also about seeing how the student reacts and responds, right, to that different scenario.
Hmm. Farhan, what do you think? I haven't heard from you in
Um,
this
exactly. I
session
was
yet.
thinking that I'm the output of this product. So I was a student and I went through this simulation. And we just did a consultancy proposal, and Dr. Rothwell used to give us an hour of presentation to prepare the framework, and we got only 25 to present in front of the whole board of director. I'm like, okay, now what we do? So those challenges, as I have faced through those simulation, and now when I face those in real life, it's alike. It's the same kind of challenges, just a tweak on it. But
Hmm.
it helps me to play those roles because I played it multiple times before.
Yeah. I mean, when you say that, it's like, oh, you get the call to, oh, you're gonna have an hour with this executive, and they come in, and then you get into the room. It's like, oh, I got 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Go.
Right,
All right.
right, exactly.
Ah,
Yeah, I was
wow.
going to jump in real quick.
Please,
Just
Lisa.
just to say that through the whole thing, I'm comparing it to the simulation we do in Dr. Katie's class for my EMOD, for my executive master's in OD. And I think that the main difference I can see is that, you're tackling, which is awesome, multiple scenarios and or models, and doing that. And it's, like you said, optional, a bit more optional, whereas our simulation is part of the class. You got to be there. And I actually was lucky enough to continue on. And so now I've become part of the customer, right? A role of the customer. And there's folks of us that play those roles. And then we change the rules. Right.
Mm.
You got an hour, but you thought it was your hour, but actually all the people who are bidding
Mhm.
show up, and now you got 10 minutes each, and you know what I mean? So I'm just
Surprise.
really resonating with everything you're saying. It's just in my mind, it's like how ours went and the angry person, and then the next group gets the where they're a bit more cooperative and so on and so forth. So
Well, because I control the online program and I control the on-site doctoral program for OD, I can easily convert the whole graduate program to a simulation-based approach. But I didn't want to do that until we had field tested this approach to death with a lot of different groups, undergraduates, graduate students, practitioners with a lot of work experience, and we've been met universally with enthusiasm. People vastly prefer this approach to lecture discussion.
oh yeah,
Lisa, can I
absolutely.
ask, is your simulation face to face? Is it virtual? Is it a combination?
It's it's both, because as we go through the beginning part of the course, we're given the RFP, and we're told like what the situation is, and we're split into consulting groups, and we're making up our whole, like, what's the name of our consultancy and all that jazz, and then we're meeting with them virtually to gather some information, but of course, we come up with 20 questions, but we only have time for 3. Right? Pick the right ones you
Right.
really, really need to know. And then what ends up happening with the face-to-face is that because we do one residency weekend every semester, so that's when we meet them. That's when we,
Oh,
try to interview.
nice.
Yeah, like so it's and again, we really are playing a part where in our simulation, it's auto company, so it's union versus management, and
Oh,
like,
okay.
yeah.
I forgot to mention a couple of things. Farhan mentioned that, or Lean did, that we have 2 books in print already using this approach. They're both on Amazon. One of them is Succession Planning, where it's the same kind of simulation. The other is Process Consultation, the OD approach invented by Edgar Schein. And participants are asked to play the role of the process consultant so that they get the actual experience of process consultation. We do have a graduate course in process consultation in our graduate program, but we don't require the use of the simulation yet. I emphasize yet. As we field test this, as we field tested it to death, we wanted to be very sure that it would work both online, on site, with graduate students, with undergraduate students, with professionals with a lot of work experience. And I think we're at that point. I think we can say that it does work with all those groups.
Yeah.
So now we
Agreed.
got the book coming into print, and we'll start doing more of these, what you might call promotional talks like this one, where we talk about the approach we're using, and we try to build interest in this approach so that we have an impact on the training of OD people.
I think people might want to pay for parts of that, like in a day workshop or something, even
Yep.
before that.
And
Lisa,
I've used it in
are we coming
executive
back from
training.
the breakouts now? Okay, so we're going to have people joining in the room soon.
I've used the same approach in executive training. I was asked to do a session on resiliency. So I built a whole simulation using the same model, and that worked with an executive team in a central bank. So the same approach works across many different cultures, many different work groups, many different target audiences. And so, yeah, but the universal complaint is we wanted more time.
Same with us. I'm sure we would have loved more time. But again, it was still just so much better to apply what we had learned.
We never hear that complaint about lectures. Give me more.
Of course. Wow. Well, we had a fantastic conversation for those of you who are coming back. I'm sure each of you had that in your rooms. Oof, where to begin? Just appreciation again for all of you here who have come today and for our featured speakers. If you'd like to come back into the room with a question, if you can use the Zoom function in the React mode to raise your hand if you want to come first. Feel free to do that. Oh, Dave Fearon has beat us, everyone, to the point. So Dave, please.
Well, Jillian and I had with just 2 of us, so it was a great luxury, and with the time available, I think became quite well acquainted, and we agree. She comes from an instructional design background. I come from years of trying to learn how to be a better teacher in management and leadership. But the point that I think I wanted to raise my hand on, given this wonderful cascade of the 3 presenters, and is that human-centered itself has a center of within a center within a center. And at the center of the human center is an individual person who is in a team or whatever they're bringing. But until we can get to understand, help them bring a voice to what they love being in the world, then it's very hard to get everything to gel. My hunch is during these highly interactive experiential sessions that Aileen and particularly shared with us, that what comes out as even as they're role playing is something about their own nature.
Mm.
And then they hear that, hey, that's me. That's not just this character. That's me.
Right.
And so that sense of developing voice, first in themselves as practitioners or future practitioners, but also having a keen ear. And I think it's a skill. So pick up on who's in the room. What can I know about them without a whole lot of background that I can help them make the connection. Anyway, that's our thought. I thank Aileen.
Yeah, I
mean,
love that
Jillian.
idea. If I can share something really quickly, I just think of when we're developing these students, as opposed to trying to fit them into a model of what they should be and how they should be as a practitioner. It's almost like that whole idea of the sculptor, right? So they're getting to formulate their ideas of who they are and finding out the best way that they get to interpret what it means to be a human-centered practitioner. So I love that statement you had. Thank you very much.
I would say though that there's maybe an analogy to the block of marble and that Michelangelo
Right.
could find the David in. And what I'm saying, since I'm a David, is that perhaps there's also a way of them learning that they can sculpt themselves out of the model. In other words, they can pull
Yes.
the undifferentiated, I'm just another person in the room, and actually carve themselves out and say, ta-da!
Right, right, right. Yeah, wow. Yep.
In the statue. Thank you, Dave. Ray, you wanted to come in with your learning.
A couple of thoughts. I did my graduate work in I did my graduate work at Bowling Green State University in college student development, and then my PhD was from Temple in the PEP program. That's I'm sure Bill knows that program. Many years of experience there, and a couple of thoughts. Number one is the PEP program at Temple, and it's no longer there. That they killed the PhD program. Was a program that was really built on a lot of NTL learning experiences. And I think I'm not sure what's happened with NTL these days. I don't know if that stuff's out there, but we had many courses that were built around that program. And so if any of you have a chance to experience that, I encourage it. And really the NTL concepts were about building the self as an agent of change, which is really about deep self-awareness.
Yes.
The second point I wanted to make, which is a really different one, is I teach in a program that does leadership development for medical school faculty from developing countries. We've been doing it for 24 years. We've had 2,500 faculty go through it from 50 some countries. We have institutes in 9 different countries. I've had a chance to do a lot of international travel. And with COVID, we had to shift gears. We had a face-to-face program for 20 years, and then we had to go online.
Yep.
And so I'm really desirous of looking at your 1,500 techniques for online engagement because while we have a good online program, I don't think we have a great online program. And so I'm excited about that product that you guys have put together because while we had a wonderful, well-developed face-to-face program using a lot of concepts of team development, I've done ropes courses, Aileen. I understand all those things, and we brought all that together. But I'm excited about learning more about online engagement and how we can improve our experiences there.
Yeah, we ran many focus groups with college faculty, with corporate trainers, with consultants, with many different groups to generate that list of 1,500, which, by the way, is not complete.
Sure,
and our goal is to build a website where we can engage people in coming up with even more engagement methods and foster dialogue around that question of how do we build. Now, many of those same methods that can be used online can also be used on site, but we don't emphasize that. We're particularly interested. We started that project in 2020 because, as you say, we had to basically go online for everything because of the pandemic. And one of the things we quickly realized was there's an engagement challenge when you have online students. Many of them don't know how to interact online. They have trouble transitioning from an on-site world to an online or even a hybrid world. I also did a book, Virtual Group Coaching, which was meant to reinvent OD's process consultation around the special challenges of virtual teams. And I shared that book with Edgar Schein to get his take on it. And so the idea being that the world is different depending on being on site versus being online. We interact differently. And so we have to relearn how to manage people, how to interact with each other, how to work in teams. All of that needs to be rethought. So
I could share something funny about that. When we first started that project, it was started off at 400 ways, 400. And then it went up to 600 and then 800. And then we were like, oh my God, we're at 1500. Dr. Rothwell finally had to say, let's stop. We'll put that in the next book. Because there's so many ways
put
that
it
we can actually do
online
this.
and get everybody engaged with engagement methods.
Right. And that book is what I loved about that book is that we have it structured in 3 ways. Before, which it's a lot of the front work that you have to do to engage students. It's not about what you're doing in front of them. And then during and then after. Even after the intervention, the training, the class, there's still ways to engage them. And so the way the book was structured is it's broken down into those segments. And it's been a fun book, both for Han and Dr. Rothwell. Of course, he's the lead of that. But Farhan and I were also part of that project.
I would mention.
I put it really quickly. I put it in the link on there. It's because that one was published with Rutledge. So if you wanted to find out a little bit more about that, it's on there too.
I've mentioned that we have 2 books in print on Amazon. Farhan and I did a book on process consultation, the OD intervention Schein invented. And we use the simulation-based approach for process consultation. So it's laid out the same way as the model in this presentation. We also did a separate book on succession planning, which a lot of people know I'm most well known for that. My book, Effective Succession Planning. Farhan and I and a current doc student at Penn State self-published a book on Amazon that's a simulation of how to apply OD to succession planning. And you could take an executive team through a simulation and have them live through the experience of building a state-of-the-art succession program. So there's a promo for a couple of other work products along the same lines.
You got a catalog of stuff, Bill.
I have 168 books in print.
Holy moly. Dave, please go and certainly Nick or Jillian, when you want to, I'd love to hear from you as well.
I just I hope that within the 1500 ways of working online, my idea is there. But if not, my lament all the years that I taught in conventional ways was that once the class was over, and particularly if the student was graduating, I would barely never hear again. And I taught for their futures, yet I wasn't having access to their futures. We could build into an online design immediate instruction and immediate debriefing, but build into the package 6 months, a year.
Yep.
And some live and video, virtual live interactions around, okay, now what have they learned? Because I suspect all of us who work on the theory side of things crave stories of what actually happens to these people that we can then use, as you are doing, to make changes in our own explanations.
You're singing to the choir, and
Oh, no.
one of my current book projects is about near and far transfer of training.
There you go.
And we know
I knew I couldn't get you, Bill. I
only 8% of off-the-job training transfers back to the job in changed behavior.
That's right.
And there's been a lot of research on near transfer, but far less on far transfer. And that's what I'm really interested in, because people can take what they learn from a training experience and apply it immediately on the job, and we can measure that. But what if they creatively reinvent what they learned from training and they apply on the job that creative reinvention? That's far transfer, and that's what I'm interested in. When we calculate ROI, we never measure that.
No.
So I have an
Yeah.
instrument to capture that and measure it.
Great. Because that's going to change your tools too,
Yeah.
because that's
I
the
just
field
wanted,
test.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that I think a piece of that, Bill, is by having a peer support system and building that infrastructure so that when you teach people at distance, that we create an intentional peer support system so that over time they can talk to each other, and then they can integrate that fully into their way of being. And I think that's all learning is collective.
Yeah,
Yes.
And I just think that's a real piece of this, that we have to do that.
you're
Great.
right.
Great idea.
Nick, Jillian, do you have anything to add? Because I've got some I'm dying to add if you don't.
I'll just add, I'm new to the doctorate program at Bowling Green, and I work in the field of education, and I'm just recognizing how crucial and important this work is and will be as the environment in K-12 education is already so complex and just continues to add layers and layers to its complexity. So I'm really excited. I love being here, and I was able to be here today. And thank you all for who you are and for sharing today.
Okay, thank you.
Nick. Jillian, you want to hop in or?
Yeah, I'll just say thanks for that. The visual of the doctor walking away and washing their hands, really resonated because we've all had that feeling where we're sitting in the room, doctor comes in, says the things, says, okay, see you next time, washes their hand and walks away. And you're like, then left there like, okay, now what? Okay, yeah. So that I thought was a really apt description of how to avoid doing that from an OD perspective.
Many of my students find that contrast between the medical model and the clinical psychologist model a very compelling way of understanding the difference between what we call the performance consultant, which I don't mean to diminish the value of that. In some companies, they do need an expert to come in to tell them what to do. Mm-hmm. But very often that is not a sustainable change strategy because there's no buy-in. The people didn't come up with it, and so the people have no buy-in to it. It's owned only by the expert. But in the OD approach, we are using the client's power, and we assume the client is the expert, but the client is a group that doesn't agree among themselves. And our challenge as OD facilitators is to help them reach some relative agreement on a way forward.
Yeah, and I can definitely
Fantastic.
put the exclamation. Oh, sorry, Bill, were you not done?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to put the exclamation point on what Jillian was saying, because in my experience with the folks that were, say, in my EMOD program, they were embedded within an organization, right, dealing with the change specific to their organization. I had the opportunity and benefit of starting out very early on in consulting with all of our customers. So on a weekly basis, I was in 1 to 3 firms working with partners, and they always agree, right? To come to agreement on the software that we sell them and implement. And certainly I won't say every time, but most times walking away, I'm like, they're going to blow up my email forever because they weren't fully involved, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm
Yep.
just adding to Jillian's to say real life, 20 years of consulting, like, yep. So
Yeah,
OD
nice.
was a gift to see at BGSU. Go ahead.
It's
Ryan.
a gift
Wrap
for
us
the
up.
future for sure. Well, love to wrap up, and thanks again to all of you who have participated and shared your knowledge and helped us build some skills here in the class today, in the classroom of life. And thanks to the Academy of Management, to Bowling Green State University, Forward Falcons, my alma mater, and to Nexus for Change, and certainly the Schmidt-Horst College of Business. So, Lisa, if you want to stop the recording, everyone is welcome to stay past the stop sign. Unfortunately, I have to